I'd like to thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening because you are very busy, everybody is busy, and so thank you for taking your time to join us for the King County Council Candidate Forum. We each have a civic duty to get involved in our community, and so tonight it's about local politics where our candidates will discuss local issues that are hopefully very important to each and every one of you. So, I'm not going to mess around. I would like to go ahead and introduce to you our candidates for this evening. First, I'd like to introduce to you John Murphy. John brings decades of experience serving communities across King County with a career spanning emergency response, healthcare, public administration, as well as law. John lives in North Bend with his wife, Beth, and he has 5 daughters and 4 grandsons. John and Beth started a consultancy focused on litigation support for emergency personnel and providing a resource for firefighters with PTSD, as well as other stress disorders. They also travel across the country, teaching on the topics of law and psychology. Please help me welcome John Murphy.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce to you Kathy Lambert. Kathy is seeking re-election to her seat in District 3, the King County Council. She's been honored by the United Way of King County as the Outstanding Public Official of the Year in 2014. And prior to serving on the council, Kathy spent 7 years at the Washington State Legislature, serving on the Appropriations, Judiciary, State Government, and Rules Committee in the House of Representatives. Kathy taught school for 16 years and is a former small business owner. Kathy enjoys traveling, hiking, and being a grandmother. So please help me welcome Kathy Lambert. If you could take a look at the map, if you can see it, hopefully you can see it, I know it's a little bit light. I want to remind you about how big District 3 is. In fact, it spans so far east, it is the largest district within King County. So I wanted to give you that as a landmark and to remind you of how big it is and what this seat's responsible for doing. Having said that, I'd like to first start and talk a little bit about the format for this evening. Our mission here with this team is to provide a fair and balanced venue for you to be able to hear from our candidates and to hopefully get to the core of why they're running for King County Council. We collected a lot of questions from our community and about 8 of them surfaced. These are the different categories that came up: growth, traffic and transportation, environment, public safety, county budget, our infrastructure, public and human services, as well as schools, among many others, but these are the highlights of what we received. So based on the questions submitted earlier, and then there were a few this evening, we're going to try and get through all of them to about 8 or 9 different questions, depending on how we do with time. And so far, we're doing really good, so we may get through all of them. Now, let me describe to you a little bit about what the process is going to be. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to give their opinion and their answer to each question presented, and I will alternate the answers of who will answer first so that we have that as an equal playing field, but there will be no rebuttals of the candidates. I'd also like to thank Susan. She's going to be timing this evening so that we honor your time. We will end at 8 o'clock. And so how this process is going to work is Susan's going to show the green card to you guys that you have 2 minutes left, and then the yellow card, or do we have another green card at 1 minute, and then a yellow card that you have 30 seconds left, so please wrap up your questions because when the red comes up, I just may cut you off. So please, no disrespect, but I'm pretty good at making sure that we stay on time, so please help me make sure that we respect those ground rules. Now we realize that after this process, You are probably going to still have questions, so I would like to invite each and every one of you, if you do have time, to please stay after and talk to John and Kathy if you still have some more questions that you want to ask. Are we ready? I think we're ready to start. So what we're going to do is I'd like to ask our candidates to start with a 2.5-minute opening statement. And John, I'd like you to go ahead and start first.
Oh, well, thank you, Renee. I'd like to thank you and the Issaquah Highlands Council for holding this forum. I think it's important for the voter to understand what the issues are facing King County and certainly the region. I've lived and worked in East King County for over 20 years and understand the issues affecting the community. And actually, I used to live right down the street across from the elementary school a couple years ago before my wife and I relocated out to North Bend, where we currently live in the unincorporated area. I've worked in public safety for over 32 years as a firefighter, retired out of East Side Fire and Rescue as a deputy fire chief, and worked with various city councils and mayors and the public on issues that are important to the East Side. I've dedicated my life to the public service as a Navy corpsman, firefighter and paramedic, deputy fire chief, and currently I'm also a physician's assistant and an attorney with a small private practice, as Renee alluded to. In my recent conversations with the current and past mayors, the same issues of bus transportation, housing, affordable housing, and housing, road conditions, taxes, levies, and seniors are often repeated in our conversations. When I was a deputy fire chief, we talked with the county and cities about improving the poor road conditions for over 20 years, yet the county and the city councils remain in the study mode, dithering on road infrastructure. Living close to where you work enhances the quality of life for those commuters, enhancing the attractiveness and the economic viability of the East Side. The mayors and many of the citizens I talk to are equally concerned about the lack of comprehensive and express bus service and the lack of transit site parking so they can park and take a bus to work. East Side citizens are also concerned about the development occurring here as well. There are controls in place to regulate and control growth, but all too often we have development that does not take into consideration the impact it has on the larger picture. It's like tossing a stone into the pond, and the ripple effect of this development affects so many of the other parts of the community that we don't seem to be planning for. My candidacy for King County Council provides the voter with a choice of representation. As a member of the council, I become a part of a workable government that is accessible and open to public meetings, efficient, transparent, and cost-effective. That's why I'm running for King County Council District 3.
Thank you, John. Kathy.
Good job. All right, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you for taking the time to come and be here with us. I have the experience to do the job. I have been doing it for several years now, and I was named, as she said, as the Outstanding Public Official of the Year. So I've served on a wide variety of committees and been able to accomplish many things. As you know, this is a county that is larger than 13 states. We have airports, we have Sheriff's Department, we have buses, we have animal control, we have courts, we have jails. We have a lot of different topics, and it needs to be somebody who is very broad in their abilities to be able to deal with all those things. This district is 1,100 square miles. The county is 2,100 square miles, so it's nearly half of the base of this county. So it's a lot of different topics. We have urban, suburban, and rural, and each have very different needs. So it takes a lot of time and effort, and it's a pleasure to be able to do that. I've been on 14 different leadership teams over the years, being chosen by my peers. There are 9 of us, and when you work with 9 people every day, you get to be very good friends. I would say that our King County Council works very well together. So we have been able to work on our budgets. Our budget has the highest credit rating available to any government in the entire United States. When the auditors were in, they said if every government's books looked like yours, we'd be in very good shape. So the budget books are in very good shape, and we try to stretch the dollars as much as possible. We also have done a lot of other things. I worked on the computer systems for King County, And we were able to transition to all updated computer systems, which has made transparency available so citizens can get on and find out exactly where the budget money is going. I have worked on the Law and Justice Committee for a very long time, both at the state and at the federal level. I have a passion for jails and courts because I do believe that when people are there, that is the bottom part of their life, and helping them turn their lives around is important. I did bring the Court of the Future here. It was the most advanced court on this side of the Mississippi River for a while, and we were able then to do a lot of things to help children while they're testifying in court. To be able to feel more secure. I started the Safe Place program, which you may have seen around. It's a program where children can be rescued, and we are rescuing children on a daily basis. So there's a lot more to tell you, but I will go back to tell you that I have 17 grandchildren.
Time.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, that's
That's
fine.
time. Thank you both. Now we're going to move on to our first question, and I'd like you to take a look at this map behind you. Many of you know that the GMA, otherwise known as the Growth Management Act, passed around 20 or so years ago, which created these boundaries. So Issaquah, if you take a look, is the eastern edge of King County's urban growth area, which brings me to our first area of questioning. All of King County, as you all know, is experiencing extremely rapid growth. And as we know, it is getting so much harder to find a balance between protecting rural and farmlands, while at the same time finding enough land in order to keep up and build homes to keep up with the demand. So John, I'm going to ask you this question first. Please share at least 2 specific actions that you feel that the King County Council can take to help manage the growth in District 3 while maintaining the natural beauty and open areas we all so enjoy.
Well, thank you for that question. Specifically, it's to take a look at what the GMA was intended to do in the first place, was to limit that sort of sprawl that we see in so many places around the country with cities just going into mega cities. And so if you go down to LA or you go to even Seattle, seems to be the urban sprawl that really has destroyed, I think, a lot of that sort of natural beauty in the trees and stuff that we so much enjoy out here. So part of that is educating people in the community what the Growth Management Act is all about and how it affects the sort of this, it seems like, intense building that goes on in the community, where the GMA in a simple form is more to densify the cities, and then as the cities become increasingly populated and there's a lack of building space, then to take a look at redoing the GMA to expand some areas that would accommodate that growth. The other thing that could occur is that, and I know that the city of Issaquah has placed a moratorium on growth, trying to take a look at the planning component of what the impact is. And as I said earlier, we have a tendency to plan these developments similar to Issaquah Highlands and Klahani and other places that don't seem to have an interrelationship with another. And so we have difficulties in roads and transportation infrastructure with sewer and water. And so I think we need to be smarter. We're supposed to be highly intelligent individuals, that we can figure out all of the population, all the density that's going to occur, and then plan for that for the future.
Thank you. Kathy.
Thank you. So that is exactly what the Growth Management Act said. The Growth Management Act was passed 26 years ago. And so each of the 4 counties that work together are part of a group called the Puget Sound Regional Council. And so I sit on that body. And what we do is exactly that. Where is the growth going to go? And so we plan out, we get numbers every 10 years from the governor's office, and then we have to plan out in the 4 counties exactly who's going to take that growth. So each of the cities is given a growth number. They are given a growth number that they must reach. The unincorporated areas are given a ceiling that they can't get over. They're not supposed to go over 4% growth. In King County, we have not gone over 2.36, I think is our highest in the last probably 5-10 years. So we've been way below our ceiling. And that is one of the ways that we've been able to keep growth down in the unincorporated areas. In addition, we have the Conservation Futures, which we fund every year. Conservation Futures then buys properties so that it can be open. Most people do not realize that 62% of this county is either owned by government and it's open space, or it's forest land or ag land. So a lot of our land is already preserved. And also, the GMA has 14 principles, and those 14 principles are how you test if there's too much growth in a particular area. And so over the years, they have not done a good job of being able to analyze and make changes that the growth management said. And you'll hear more when we talk about roads, about how that has negatively impacted roads. But the GMA had said that if you don't do those things, that you will have the problems we're facing right now.
Thank you. Our second question is going to focus on city and county relations. There is often a push and a pull relationship between King County and its incorporated cities. Often cities feel that the county increasingly wants them to deliver services once provided by the county, whereas the county feels that its tax revenue has not kept up with the growth enough to pay or to provide those services. So Kathy, I'm going to ask you to answer this question first. Please share at least 2 areas where you feel that the relationship with the incorporated cities can be improved as a member of the county council.
Well, I get along really well with all the mayors in this district. Every one of them has given me a quote endorsing me. So I think the first thing in anything in government is having a relationship and networking, where you can call people and talk to them and work your problems out. So the first thing is maintaining that relationship. The second thing is that we have got to do a better job of dealing with the 1% cap. The 1% cap has been over 10 years, and we have cut and cut and cut. And so what ends up happening is the state cuts out what they do and gives unfunded mandates to the county. And then the county says, well, we can't afford this. And so we, unfortunately, sometimes give unfunded mandates to the cities. We try not to do that because we don't like when it happens to us. So for an example, this year, 2 years ago, we added more voter boxes, so people would have a more convenient way of dropping their ballots off. Well, other counties did not do that, so the legislature went and made a blanket rule across the country, across the state, and said we had to add some more. In this county, it cost us an additional $4 million. We did not have that $4 million. So those kinds of things that come down from the state to us have been very difficult. But because we're feeling that, we're trying very hard not to do that to the cities. So we do work very hard with the cities, and especially in the law and justice area, we've worked really hard to try to make sure that we can cut down on the costs of that. So I think keeping the relationships open and looking for ways where we can both save money is really, really important.
Thank you, Kathy. John?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, absolutely. Please share at least 2 areas where you feel that the relationship with the incorporated cities can be improved as a member of the county council.
Well, I think that the lines of communication obviously need to be kept wide open between the incorporated areas, the cities and their elected officials, and the county and their elected officials. Because we're intertwined. I mean, there's a lot of interaction that goes on between the county and the city that, we directly affect each other in some of the decisions that we made or some of the programs that we implement. And so, like Kathy indicated, there may be some unfunded mandates coming down to the county, and certainly affects the cities. And I think a good example of that would be when the Kalahani annexation into the city of Sammamish occurred. And that was a discussion that I sat in for years, talking about who's going to pay for the parks, who's going to pay for the improvements of the roads, who's going to pay for all this other stuff. And it took, what should have taken, a couple of years or 3 years, took them almost 8 or 10 years. And so, and during that time frame, the areas just declined or deteriorated because of, the limited funds that the county has, because of all the different business lines that the county supports. So I think that there's enough money around. We probably don't think so, because when we run our own household budgets, there's never enough money And certainly when you're running a billion-dollar enterprise, there doesn't seem to be enough money. But I think that if we take a look at the revenue that we have and the revenue sharing possibilities that we have, and with intelligent people, I think we can work out a resolvable and solvable solution to many of the problems that we see.
Thank you. Now we're going to switch gears, and the next two questions are a hot topic for many of us because it touches each and every one of us, and that has to do with traffic and transportation. Clearly, traffic congestion and transportation are absolutely glaring concerns for the entire region. More and more people are commuting long distances and must go through Issaquah and other cities within District 3 along their route, which puts so much pressure on these city roads. So John, I'm gonna have you go first. In the near to medium term, as a council member, what 3 specific transportation improvement projects would you prioritize, and how will you pay for them?
Wow.
Wow, all right, so I have to pull the genie out of the bottle, right?
That's right.
Well, when I moved here in 1988, I was deputy fire chief with Eastside, or actually it was King County Fire District 10 before it became Eastside, and I lived up on the plateau, the Sammamish Plateau. And when I was here, there was always this sort of infrastructure difficulty with the Hobart Road, SR 900, the roads that we have, the Duthie Hill Road, have always been of somewhat controversy because we couldn't get our fire trucks and fire apparatus down there. And I was always working with or harping on, local government to try to fix the road. And they go, well, this is not our problem, it's the county's problem. And so, 25 years later, we're still talking about it. So I think, and I know that Kathy's going to say that there's a task force that's been created in order to study that sort of a problem. And I think that those are all good things. But we have a tendency, as I said in my opening statement, that we have a tendency to put together too many committees, and we kind of dither on the issue of how are we going to fix this? How are we going to make our road and infrastructure better? So part of it is we need to take kind of the bold steps and say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to fund it. We need to bring a lot of other parties in, the federal government, the state. I advocate that we bring in and create a public-private partnership with the major corporations that are in the region, because they add a traffic load to our road. So private-public partnership. I think I heard last night that let's alter the work schedule. Does everybody have to go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning? Can they come, can they stagger their work schedule? So, and that happens in some areas of the country where there's staggered work schedules that cut the workload down. I think the last part is, if we want people to take the buses, we have got to put parking on the transit stations, because my daughter, who lives up in the plateau, goes from transit station to station trying to get on the bus, and she has to drive to work.
Kathy.
Thank you. Well, there's 2 main ways to get to work, either bus or roads, and then also bicycle and pedestrian. Let's talk about the ones that have other power than our own. So the buses, as you know, Sound Transit is the first east-west connection. And when that was being done, even though I'm not on the Sound Transit Committee, your mayor was very instrumental in getting the first east-west corridor. And I think that's really important, because everything else in the county seems to always have the bent of going north and south, but they can forget sometimes that we're east and west. So I'm very glad that that is part of the projection. We also are going to be adding more rapid ride lines, and then we've got in this next funding of bus money, the 269 will be expanded in their hours, and then again in next March, the 269 will be given more hours. So I think that looking at how we can get more and more hours out here is really important, and in both of the next 2 bus inclusions, there will be more coming out to this district. So I'm very pleased about seeing that happen. The road funding is a huge problem. And it started not 25 years ago, but 26 years ago, when the Growth Management Act said how the funding was to be done. And if you don't do X, then these things are going to happen. And I keep saying I wish they had given stock quotes, because if we had done what they said there, we would have been in really good shape. So when we get more into transportation, I will talk, thank you, I will talk to you more about exactly what's going on there. We do have, the mayor put together a task force with all of the cities. We did talk about what needs to be done, and we also are going to have to We have a task force right now working with the cities on how much money they are willing to support to going to the ballot next year. We cannot build more roads without more money. That was time. How was that for good?
Thank you. Continuing on the same topic of transportation, and Kathy, I'm going to have you answer this one first.
Good.
In the long term, what 3 specific big picture transportation improvement projects would you prioritize, and how are you going to pay for it?
Well, that's the main question right there. We are going to have another dedicated source right now for our roads. The roads that connect, that are county roads, are not paid for by everybody in the county. Only 200,000 people in this county pay for all the rural roads. They pay $2.25 per $1,000 of assessed value. And what that generates is about $80 million. To take care of a $40 billion asset, which is what our roads infrastructure is, of 1,500 miles, it will take about $400 million. So we have a need for $400 million, and we get about 80 from that, and we get 16 from gas tax and from some other things. But with gas tax going down, because we have better fuel efficiency and we have electric cars, and I just bought a new car that gets double the gas miles because it's a hybrid. So a lot of people are paying less into gas tax because we're using less of our gas. So there's less gas tax being paid. Unless we have a dedicated source, first of all, that everybody in this county pays for, we are going to be in serious trouble. 2.2 million people use these roads, and 200,000 pay for them. That is not okay. So we have got to change that funding formula. The cities need to cooperate with us when this goes to the ballot to make sure that they are okay with that. The first preliminary draft said that they would only pay for 300 miles of the 1,500 miles. And when I looked at the list, it did not include any of the evacuation routes. So I was not pleased with that you cannot put a project together without considering our evacuation routes in case of emergency. All but 7 of those are now into the plan, but that still takes us only up to about 400 of the miles. So we're still negotiating with the cities, and I'm hoping that there will be a ballot initiative next year that will do exactly what the Growth Management Act said needed to be done to finance these roads.
John.
Well, I think it goes back to the communication that the county has with the cities in trying to take a look at the impact of a few payers supporting a large infrastructure that is deteriorating over time. I think dedicated funding it would be worthwhile. Certainly, it's going to affect people as to the source. So where is it coming from? Is it coming from excess levy? Is it coming from sales tax? Is it coming from more property tax? Is it coming from those sources I think we are already overtaxing? And people are starting to rebel. And so we need to kind of take a look at a funding mechanism that is satisfactory to all and acceptable to all and is equitable. So we can repair the roads, we can improve the infrastructure. I will go back to what my answer was last time, is that there are large corporations in this Puget Sound region that get significant tax breaks to be here. And part of that impact is we need to recognize that yes, we've given them tax incentives to put plants and factories and manufacturing apparatus into play, but I think it's important that they understand that the impact that they have with their employees on our infrastructure, and certainly when they want to go out to East King County to Duval and Carnation and North Bend and go hiking the trails, that they use our roads. I'm not saying our roads, it's my road or Kathy's road, it's our roads. And so they're using our roads, but they're not paying for it. So we need to kind of get the big picture with industry. And then I think the last thing is we need to maybe think about some equitable or equalization on sales tax, where people from the unincorporated area shop in the incorporated area, and none of that sales tax, or a portion of it, not enough, comes back into the county to help support that road infrastructure.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the topic of the environment. District 3 contains beautiful forests, farmlands, and hundreds of streams and rivers. So John, I'm going to have you start with this question. In your opinion, what are the 2 biggest environmental challenges facing East King County, and what specific actions will you take in response as the representative of District 3?
I think one of the large environmental issues is I think the initiative that Dow Constantine and our governor is endorsing is trying to reduce our carbon footprint. And so an example of that is right down the street. Your fire station down here is a LEEDs. I think it has a silver LEEDs designation that it puts out no pollution. And it creates a sort of a neutral environment where you can still have the public safety in mind, and it serves the public, but it doesn't create any sort of carbon footprint. One of the interesting things is we used a biofuel to fire up our fire trucks, and it would melt the seals on the fuel lines, and so we had to go from rubber to silicone, which is a maintenance issue, which we didn't realize. But we tried to do something, I think, a little bit more creative in order to zero out that carbon impact. I think that improving the trails and the access to trails will help preserve the trails, because when you go out to North Bend and the Mount Si Trail or Twin Falls Trailhead, it's just a steady stream of traffic going out there and a big parking nightmare. So we need to make access, I think, to those trailheads a lot more accessible, which reduces, again, that sort of impact on the environment. And then I know that in building out in the rural area, we have an issue with water permitting and wells, and there's a Supreme Court case pending on that. But it's interesting that people still want to build out there, and I think we should have environmental controls. So if people are going to build out in the rural areas, that they have strict standards that they have to follow in order to make an impact on that area.
Kathy.
Thank you very much. Well, there are strict standards in the unincorporated areas, and they're monitored by an agency called DEPR, Department of Permitting and Environmental Resources. So first of all, I think flooding is a huge issue. And so I'm a supervisor on the flood district, and we put about $60 million a year into flood projects and mitigation and fish habitat. And so that money is your separate taxing district to the flood district, and that's very important. Before the flood district was formed, which I helped form, we only got $3 million a year, and we have so many projects that need to be done to make sure that our levees and our rivers are healthy. And so we decided that $3 million wasn't enough for the list of projects that are needed, so the flood district is a separate taxing district. And we are doing a very good job of trying to make sure that every one of the municipalities and the unincorporated areas get their projects so that they can deal with flooding and make sure that their rivers are in good shape for the fish too. The other thing that I have been very interested in that has to do with greenhouse gases is dealing with our landfill. It's one of the projects that I am very interested in, and most people are glad somebody knows about it, they just don't want to know. So I have become very interested in our landfill and also in our biosolids and our biosolids distribution. So our landfill does collect methane, but I don't like the way that the percentage of the methane is not being collected. And so I have been to Europe, and I have seen 11 waste-to-energy plants. And if you look at the articles recently that have been written about that topic, you will see some pretty exciting things. And I would like to bring to this area a waste-to-energy plant, very much like what's either in Hamburg or which is in Florida, so that we can be processing our waste in a way that is a resource.
Our sixth question is, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to dial up the heat a little bit with this topic, and it's addressing public safety. The topic of safe injection sites is front and center in a lot of recent conversations, whether it is verbal conversations in the news or in social media. So Kathy, I'll have you answer this first. As a county council member, what is your opinion on what King County can and should do to address the idea of a safe injection site in East King County?
Well, first of all, I don't support a safe injection site. I don't think that that is even possible. Injecting yourself with heroin or allowing the person next to you to do that is not safe. I think what we need to do is have therapy on demand. And that is really, really important. My first husband was a counselor in a drug rehab, and so I was a live-in counselor in a drug rehab for 18 months. So I do know something about what it is to deal with addiction. I was never addicted, but the people who lived in the house were. And I've seen it up close and personal. And these are really important people that just really need the therapy and the counseling that is needed. I very much support the needle exchange program. We have a very extensive program in King County. I want to make sure that people who are injecting are using clean needles because they don't need to get any other diseases. But I want to stop the disease flow by continuing to have them taking drugs. We have passed a bill in the legislature last session, House Bill 1713, and what that bill does is that it allows us to be able to involuntarily commit somebody for drug addiction. And when I was working in a drug rehab program, I had the lever of saying, if you don't go through the program, you go back to jail. And that was the motivation until people could get clean enough that they were motivated to want to stay. So I think having this ability to have a site, we're building it right now in Soto, and that we can confine people to get them the help. We have done 2 studies, one in New Jersey and one here done by the Union Gospel Mission, where we found that 70 to 80% of the people that are drug addicted would be willing to go into a program if we had it readily available. And that's where I think we need to be. We need to get that readily available on demand so that we can get people clean and sober.
John?
I disagree with Kathy on the safe injection sites. As a healthcare provider, I think this is a public health emergency, and certainly the opioid epidemic in our country is killing thousands of people every day. To do nothing is not a solution. And I think that as a healthcare provider, the public health, mandate, I guess, that still comes down to the local level to approve it, is to prevent secondary infections. So HIV, hepatitis C, all the communicable diseases that we see. I know in my practice as an occupational health specialist, we see some people coming in who have addiction, secondary infections from addiction. So I think the issue is, yes, we need to do rehabilitation. Yes, we need to do safe injection sites. There's good models up in Vancouver. I think there's a couple European countries that have done this that have been very successful in that rehabilitation component of trying to get people off addictive drugs. But we have a horrible substance abuse problem in this country, and we need to do something about it. This is one aspect of an entire spectrum of how we're going to be taking care of people that are suffering from addiction. The other component of it is that I think involuntary incarceration is illegal. As an attorney, I think that there's a program in Boston that does that. They have what they call a drug court for heroin abusers, and you either go to jail or you go to rehabilitation. And so most opt out for rehabilitation, but the empirical studies right now are saying that may not be as successful as everybody is hoping that it is. So we need to do something. I think the Public Health Department is on the right track. The City of Issaquah Council has discussed it. I know that there are some parents here who lost children as a result of that. And so I think we need to do something positive to make an impact on this addictive problem.
Wow, you guys are doing great on time. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, you got good timekeepers.
Yeah, I've got a great timekeeper.
And she already warned us.
Well, now I'll dial it down just a little bit. And our 7th topic has to do with our county budget. So running a county as large as King County clearly takes a substantial amount of tax revenue. So John, you're going to answer this one first. When it comes to the county budget and methods of generating tax revenue, what are at least 2 specific areas that you'd like to improve upon as a member of the county council?
I'm a taxpayer. And so I hate to have these repetitive taxes coming down the pike because I am on a fixed income, and I know there's a lot of seniors here in our district. And I think that when we take a look at the property cap that was passed a number of years ago, really hurt us as far as county government and collecting money in order for us to maintain what the county executive says. We have 60 lines of business that we support. And so, and I'm in agreement that we need to really look at lifting the cap on the property tax, but also have a balance where we can't be continually taxed up and up and up because we're not going to have any money. And so we need to balance out, a lift of the lid or the cap with all the other taxes that are coming down the pike. So taking a look, and we have the highest gas tax. We got like the highest of everything that affects King County, and maybe not so much other counties in the Puget Sound area or in eastern Washington. So generating money is many different facets. So we take the ones that I think people that are using the most, like sales tax, they're doing gas tax, and what Kathy alluded to earlier is that that's becoming less and less. Try to squeeze more money out of the federal government, which is going to be nearly impossible with the new administration in play. And so, again, we have to go back and be very creative as to how we think about collecting money. Do we do user fees? Do we do more tolling? Do we do access to parks? I mean, there's lots of revenue streams, but most of them are objectionable to many people because they just can't afford to do it. So again, we're smart as elected officials and as citizens, and I think this is an issue that we need to kind of really pump the citizens for to say, are you willing to pay for it?
Kathy?
Thank you. Well, I agree that people have tax fatigue, and that's really a problem. And I'm hoping that our seniors, that if you qualify for the senior exemption, not all of our seniors who qualify have applied for that. So if you are a senior and you believe that you're low income, you need to call the assessor's office to get the senior exemption. First of all, the money that we do get needs to be spent wisely, and that was why I think it's so important that we have become very transparent with our budgeting. It's online. If you think that there's something that shouldn't be spent that way, let us know. It's very transparent. We really have done a good job in the last couple of years of trying to prioritize. There are 9 of us, and we have a very large county, as you see, with being bigger than 13 states. So it is a very complicated budget, but I think we have done a good job. And I will tell you that on almost all of our budgets, they have been unanimous. One year there was one person that didn't vote for it, but they've been mostly unanimous because we've worked together, all 9 of us, very carefully to make sure that we did prioritize. But not everything that everybody agrees on necessarily, but together we have decided on what the budget should be. When people pay their property taxes, they assume that all of that money goes to King County, and that is not correct. King County is the treasurer for many, many different taxing districts. So out of every dollar that goes into your taxes, King County gets only 18% or 18 cents out of every dollar. So most people think we get 100%, and that is not accurate information. I also want to say that the dedicated funds, most people think when they look at the budget, this budget is so big, but most of our monies are what they call dedicated accounts. The only money that we can move around is the general fund money. Everything else, I cannot take airport money and spend it at wastewater. I can't take the wastewater money and put it in roads. There are certain accounts that must be exactly where they are.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to the last question, and the last question has to do with schools. And those of you that live here in Issaquah know that we are so proud, we tout how proud we are with our Issaquah school district. And many residents don't realize that King County plays a policy role when it comes to citing of local schools within the city jurisdictions that are incorporated under King County. So Kathy, I'm going to have you answer this question first. What role do King County policies play in locating new schools in the Issaquah School District? And what is your opinion about this?
Oh, I have lots of opinions. Okay, move over. So the only process that we have is the land use issue of where the schools can be sited. And so that is our main job on that. We have not, as a policy, required the school districts to work with the counties and tell us where they're going to put the schools. As the bill is right now, they cannot build outside the urban growth line. And that is a huge issue because when you look at the size of each school, an elementary school takes a certain amount of land, and a middle school takes another size, and then, of course, the high school is like 20 acres. So when you look at a built-out place like Issaquah, and then you say, we're going to build a school, and we need 20 acres for this one, and we need 10 acres for that, and 5 acres for this, it's very difficult to find that kind of land, and it's very expensive when it's built out in an urban growth area. Outside of every urban growth area is what they call a PAA area, potential annexation area, that will eventually become part of the city. It seems to me that if there isn't land inside the UGA, that we should look at the PAA area as close to the GMA area, growth management line area, so that we aren't making the infrastructure far away from the basic services, but that we are not taking taxpayers' money and having to be very expensive in what we're able to pay. I'm seeing the time. So that's the first thing. What they did is they had a task force, and they looked at all the properties that all the school districts own, and they put it into 4 quadrants. Land that would be acceptable to the county plan as it is, land that might be acceptable, and land that there's no way will be acceptable, and then the 4th category is land we have no idea what to do with. And that was the end of the report. Well, I'm sorry, the report doesn't end if you have properties that nobody knows what they're going to do with them. So I think that as we look, we need to make sure to do that.
John?
Thank you. Just wanted to say that I think the Issaquah school districts are great. I had 5 of my girls graduate from all, Skyline and Issaquah High School, and they all went on to college and did very well for themselves. So I think they had a good educational foundation here in Issaquah, and I applaud the school system for being so innovative. I think the issue with schools is very important, and I see that, we're already building temporary structures and, outside the schools, anticipating the growth that we're going to be seeing. And I agree that I think that, the county does own a lot of land, and there are the PAAs that Kathy alluded to that we need to kind of take a look at, are we going to, where's the next population center going to come, and then where do we place our schools? And to develop our schools, from the get-go without doing temporary buildings. Now, I understand why they do temporary buildings because, the class size grows or the population grows and gets smaller, which they need to make, certain accommodations for. Again, it goes back to the developers. And so I'm not anti-development, but I think the developers need to pay a fair share, probably more than their fair share, for the impact that they're making on bringing in 3,000 to 5,000 more houses into an area that's going to affect all the infrastructure, including schools and water and sewer and the water treatment plants and all the things that, that go to make a city. So, and again, this is long-term planning. This doesn't happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next year. But again, working with the cities, working with the counties, working with the developers, and certainly working with the schools as to what their anticipated needs are, and then kind of reverse engineer that back to our level, at the county level, at the city level, and at the developer level.
Thank you both for answering all those 8 questions. And now we are going to move to the closing statement. And so you each have 1.5 minutes to do your closing statement so that we stay on time and end right at 8 o'clock. And I'd like to first start with John.
Oh, well, thank you. I started. You can start with Kathy if she wants, but.
I'm either way, whatever you want to do.
All right, I'll go. So thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for coming out tonight on a Wednesday night. I know that it's tough for some of you, and certainly I think the advantage of having this recorded and broadcast will affect and influence a lot of other people. We continue to kick the can down the road, and we can do better. And the status quo does not address every changing facet of what's going on in our county. Longstanding issues have not been resolved with technical solutions, or expertise and money has been applied against the problem, but should approach as an adaptive challenge to the community, where we as government officials require a new way to think about things and then apply new learning to old problems. We have to work with every tool in our toolbox, and we have a lot of them, and again, and to improve the lives of those living on the east side and in King County. And I will work for the citizens as a council member by improving your everyday lives, providing transparency in government, and working within the budget, and dedicate my experience and expertise to move projects forward. My promise to you is to be an active and transparent participant representing the needs of our growth areas and all the citizens on the east side by my membership on the council, It is imperative that we stimulate our citizens of the district to engage in public discourse that's productive. And it's tough because we do have families and jobs and kids and a whole afterlife after 5 o'clock when they come home with kid activities. But I do work for you, and I ask for your vote in November.
Thank you, John. Kathy?
So I also want to thank people for coming tonight, for watching this, for being civically engaged, and hope that you will make sure that you get your ballot in. That is an important part of being an American, is to being able to vote. So please exercise your right. Being a member of the King County Council, as I said, it is a huge job. We would have the largest district. We are bigger than, as a county, than 13 states. There's a lot to know, and I think having somebody that has the experience and the background is important so that there is not a long learning curve. We are on television, so you can look at all of our council meetings and watch them at your own convenience. If you have insomnia, it might cure that some days. I would love the opportunity to continue to work for you. I have lots of projects in the making right now. Program starting in 2 months called Trace that will help children in crisis is another one of them. I also will be teaching a class in January on Government 101. A lot of people have talked to me about government and what they need to know. I've been very involved in the Safe Place program, and so your library is a safe place, so children in crisis can go there and get help immediately. It is the only program of its kind in the county where children can self-analyze that they're in trouble, and we are able to save kids every week from getting on the street. If a child's on the street for more than 24 hours, the likelihood of them being approached for prostitution or drugs is astronomically high. And so having this program is vital. Please remember to vote and vote for me. Thank you.
Let's give a huge Issaquah round of applause to our candidates.